Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another episode of Robinson Run. I'm your host, Brady Kreitzer. This is part 8 of a micro history of one single 18th century community in the wilds of western Pennsylvania along a creek about 5 miles long called Robinson Run. I am a professional historian of the American frontier. I'm the author of 8 books, and you can find me on television series like Into the Wild Frontier on INSP, George, Rise of a Revolutionary on Fox Nation, and Outlaws and Lawmen with Sean Hannity, also on Fox Nation. In this study, we've been trying to really decipher what life was like on the frontier in the 18th century here in the first American West over the Appalachian Mountains. And we've seen in our last episode, episode 7, the real horrors of frontier life emerge here on the frontier. In September of 1782, a party of 25 British allied native warriors attacked and destroyed the settlements at Robinson Run. They burned the home of Hugh Henry Brackenridge and most importantly Gabriel Walker before having a showdown with the 4th Battalion of the Washington County Militia outside of what is today called Ewing's Fort. I would encourage you, if you haven't seen the previous episodes of Robinson Run, to go back and really trace the journey of these people to get a better understanding of how they came here, what life was like for them, and how it all came crashing down in September of 1782. The destruction, the raid on Robinson Run really eviscerated the world that these settlers had built to that point. And what we're going to focus now, of course, for the remainder of the series and beyond, is how they rebuild, because this is a traumatic experience that really drastically changed the way they view themselves, their relationship to the government, and how the government viewed them. Remember, in 1781, just 7 months earlier, they petitioned Congress for material support, for protection, for defense, desperate because they knew that an attack would be coming. And of course, they never received it. So what I want to do today is a special addendum to the raid on Robinson Run. And it's a discussion of the immediate aftermath of that conflict. Most notably, the 2 children of Gabriel Walker that were murdered during the attack. If you will recall, 5 of Gabriel Walker's children were taken captive by native warriors. And before those warriors abandoned Robinson Run, they brutally murdered 2 of Gabriel Walker's children in front of everyone hiding inside Ewing's Fort. It was a ghastly, terrible scene, and the scars remain, as we'll see today. We don't have the names of those children, one being 8 years old, one being 12 years old. But we do know that their legacy remains, particularly in the form of their burial. What I want to do today is try to find the burial plot of the Gabriel Walker children, because obviously losing a child is the worst nightmare of every parent, and that's something that we can all commiserate with, as just even in the context of war and history, something that stays with you when you research. I mean, I study a lot of examples of frontier violence and partisan conflict, but this is one that I just have to admit I can't shake. Because when those children were murdered and the battle ended, I mean, yes, it goes into the history books, but their parents were left to pick up those pieces. And they had to bury their children, cognizant of the fact that they didn't have a permanent Presbyterian church yet established in their community. That's going to come down the road. And I think a lot of the impetus for it's going to be the fact that these children had to be buried without an official Presbyterian cemetery nearby. That's for future episodes of Robinson Run for sure. But we do know that those 2 children will be buried not far away from Gabriel Walker's farm. They were in marked graves, but only marked with wooden placards. And the wooden placards didn't survive. But those children's earthly remains are still in place where they were left in 1782. So the point of this episode, and this is something that, again, I've been looking forward to doing because I have the technology and the means of doing it, but not necessarily looking forward to dealing with the content, is I want to find those graves. Because they're still in place even though the modern world has been built around them, and we'll use all the technology available to us. I'm very fortunate as a professional historian that I have access to technology like ground penetrating radar and LiDAR scans, that we can try our best to find where the two Walker children are buried. And maybe we can install a memorial today, if not physically, at least in the form of this video. The resource we're going to use to find the Gabriel Walker family gravesite is going to be something we referenced before. In the 1950s, a local historian named Milton Allison, wrote a series of what he called Robinson Run sketches. And these are now, 80 years old, almost 80 years old. And they were written from information from his boyhood. Milton Allison was, born in the 1800s. So history, always takes a back seat to modern progress. And we know that Robinson Run was quickly bisected by the railroad and everything kind of built up around that. So Milton Allison wanted to preserve whatever he could from his youth. And a lot of that was drawing on stories from his grandparents and elders of the community. And he left us with this great document. You can find this online. I'll put a link in the comment section below if you want to read it. There's a lot of good information. But what we're worried about is his discussion of what he called the Walker School in its former location. Now, the Walker School is going to be directly in what is today the community of Rennerdale, Pennsylvania, in Collier Township. Rennerdale is a wonderful little community, kind of almost a time machine in a way, visiting there. It proclaims itself as the origin of Flag Day. That's pretty cool. But that's not the history we're looking for. So for any folks who are near Rennerdale or close enough to visit, I think you'll get a good appreciation for this. But even their schoolhouse was called the Walker School generations later. Here is what Milton Allison tells us about the Walker School, and I want to key in on a few important phrases here. The Walker School, still recalled by former pupils, the youngest of whom are now in middle life, for us they're dead, stood on the east side of the new Pinchot Road, about 2 blocks north of Noblestown Road, on the McCown property. So this is our first clue of what we're looking for here. Pinchot Road is not there anymore. But Noblestown Road definitely is. It mirrors Robinson Run the entire way through. On their way to the school, the Iffley children, Iffley, remember, was the little tiny railroad settlement that was built over the Gabriel Walker homestead in the 1800s. So it's going to be a good clue for us as to where and how we found the Walker homestead. You can see more of that in episode 4. On their way to the Iffley school, the Iffley children left the Noblestown Road at the foot of Walker's Lane. That's still there, by the way. Now the post office corner in Rennerdale. That post office is not there. And follow the lane, now Sunnyside Avenue, still there, up through the orchard. That's gone. They then trudge northeast across the field, and this is where things get important for us, passing within sight of the old Walker family burying lot, where the murdered children of Gabriel Walker were buried, and emerged at the road near the Walker Spring House. The site of this structure is now a depression in the ground whose abandoned spring still flows. So that's one part of a bigger article, but between you and I, that is all we need to really key in on the location of the Walker children's graves. And we'll pull out all the stops and all the technological tools and advantages we have to find them. So here we have a close-up view of part of Rennerdale, Pennsylvania. And there's a few things I want to key in for you on the map to help you orient yourself. At the very bottom of the screen, going left to right, is going to be our anchor point geographically for locating the Walker family graves, Noblestown Road. Its course has not changed, at least not in this part of the road's course, since Milton Allison wrote this article in 1952. Running north to south off of Noblestown Road, you can see it cuts your screen directly in half, is Sunnyside Avenue. And Noblestown Road and Sunnyside Avenue are two of the three definite coordinates or features we want to use to locate the Walker grave. Now, I have that same document printed out here in front of me, so we'll just review that quickly. 2 blocks north of Noblestown Road. Okay, so take a look at that. The children follow the lane, now Sunnyside Avenue. Again, it cuts your screen directly in half, right up the middle. Up through the orchard. They trudged northeast across the field and emerged at the road near the Walker Spring House. The site of this structure is now a depression in the ground where the abandoned spring still flows. So we have Noblestown Road. That's there. It's right, left to right, the bottom of your screen. We have Sunnyside Avenue. That's there, north and south, right, bisecting your screen up and down. The third triangulation point we need is that spring. And as we've seen in our previous episode, episode 7, when we talked about the destruction of Robinson Run, we know that springs don't go away. As historians, springs still flow, and they are some of the most important sort of aspects of 18th century life that we can use to key in on locations, because springs will mostly always remain. So if we can find Noblestown Road, got it, Sunnyside Avenue, got it. If we can find that spring, we can, I think, with certainty, locate the Walker family burial plot. And as far as we know, the only 2 people buried there, because there will be a church founded in the years to come not too far away, are those poor 2 children, the 8-year-old and the 12-year-old, who were killed by those British Allied Indian warriors in September of 1782. Okay, so here we are, our zoomed in view of the area that should be the location of the Walker family graves. We know that the triangular point we're looking for is the former Walker family spring house, which is called by Milton Allison in 1952, a depression in the ground. The road on your left-hand side of the screen, is Sunnyside Avenue. That was important. The road on the right is McMichael Road. And these graves and that mystery spring should be somewhere in between this area. Now, again, in preparation for this, we need to find features of the landscape that wouldn't go away, and a depression in the ground, even by the standards of 1952, but certainly by the standards of 1782, would still be there. Now, when we tried to find the Robinson Run Wagon Road, you'll recall we used a technology called LiDAR. LiDAR is an overhead scan used by a drone that essentially removes all of the surface material that's not integral parts of the landscape. So things like buildings and roadways and foundations and swimming pools, as you can see here, will be eliminated, and all we'll see on our LiDAR scan is the original formation of the ground. And something like a natural spring would be very apparent. Let's go ahead and take a look at our LiDAR scans, and we will see if we can find a depression in the ground that would indicate where that spring may be, and ultimately where the children's graves of the Walker family will be buried. Technology is a wonderful thing, and just like with finding the wagon road out of Robinson Run, we're going to use that same technology to find a depression in the ground of a natural spring. And you're seeing it dead center in the middle of your television or phone right now. Sunnyside Avenue is on the left. McMichael Road is marked on the right. Directly in the center of that block of homes today is a large indentation in the ground. We'll go ahead and use our handy dandy markers to clarify this. So you can see right here, we have an indentation in the ground that should be the location of that natural spring. Now, a couple things I want to point out, and I'll change colors for this. We'll make this nice and green. I finally figured out, folks, how to use this technology. Go figure. The area you see here in green, this arch right here, is elevated ground. So I want you to have some idea of what you're looking at here. The spring is the indentation in the middle. The back side, or the western side of the indentation, is much higher in elevation than below. So based on these scans and this technology, of course, we wouldn't see anything left of the graves themselves, because those would leave very little disturbance that we would find in the ground. That depression is our triangular point, our third triangulation to find these graves. And I feel very confident that we've done so. So once again, courtesy of Google, we have a zoomed in view of the block of homes situated between McMichael Road on the right, Columbia and Sylvan Avenue on the bottom of your screen, and Sunnyside Avenue on the left of your screen. And what we can say is that depression in the ground, that natural spring, is going to be precisely where this copse of trees is located. And that's going to be, again, by all accounts, according to the LiDAR scans, the position, the site of that free-flowing spring, which Milton Allison describes as a depression in the ground where the abandoned spring still flows. So we're going to have to check out that spot and get a better indication of what we're seeing. I can tell you already, if that is the abandoned spring, I have a very good idea of where the children are going to be buried. Because it's a spring, you have to understand the spring house was built over it by the Walker family. And that's going to be their source of clean, drinkable water for the foreseeable future. So when I've studied former burial sites, frontier burial sites before, one of the things you have to be very cognizant of, and they certainly were, is that when you bury human remains near a spring, which was not uncommon, you want to make sure you bury the remains downstream of the spring. Because if you buried them upstream of the spring, that is to say on the elevated part of the spring, as the bodies decomposed and deteriorated, you risk essentially toxifying, poisoning, spoiling your water supply. You wouldn't want to do that. So I'm very certain that when the Walkers buried their children near this spring, and I'll go back to yellow for this one, they did not bury them up here. Okay, you can maybe see my yellow there. Maybe I'll go to something a little more clear, maybe a blue. There we go. They did not bury them up here. Instead, the Walkers, and I'll go back to red for this, would have buried the children below the spring. And that's going to be in this area right here. Okay, and for that, this is high technology, folks. We'll use this right here. We'll put our cross. Okay, and that's very likely the area where the children are buried. It's the only area that makes sense to me, because to bury them anywhere above that, with our visible red, who am I kidding? We can't see that. Our visible red, to bury them up here wouldn't make any sense. It would risk poisoning your water supply. So we're going to go ahead and take a drive, take a peek at this particular spot, and we're going to see if we can get maybe even one step closer to identifying where these two young children are buried, and maybe memorializing them in the way they certainly deserve, and definitely the way their families would have wanted them to. Okay, so here you're looking at that location from McMichael Road, the copse of trees where the spring should be located directly in front of you. And now I will be very frank about this. I do obviously care a lot about history. It's my profession. It's my career. I am not going to infringe on the modern world in any way by doing this. This is private property. This is someone's yard. I have a backyard. You maybe have a backyard. You don't want people poking around. So I didn't go there and film. I did drive by. I didn't go there and film. The screenshot you're seeing here is actually from Google Maps. And you can tell it's from Google Maps because it has the little indicator on the right-hand side, the little arrow right here. I did not film here. I did not infringe on private property, and I'm not going to. But we'll use Google's image, which is apparently fine to use in this regard. That being said, if you know these landowners, if you are this landowner, I would love to come and visit and do a proper survey on the site. It wouldn't require digging or soil disturbance in any way. Really just scans and photos and videos would probably be fine. But that you can see on the image, if I make my circle in this dark spot in the middle, is the natural flowing spring. That's a deep depression in the ground, a U-shaped depression. It's the one we found on the LiDAR. And that is the site of the Walker Spring House. Amazingly, and again, the world keeps going, life goes on. This is someone's backyard today. So we're going to respect property rights, but you can visibly see this location from the road if you do want to check it out from McMichael Road. As I mentioned, you can see that copse of trees, and behind it is high rising ground. These children would not have been buried there because, again, that would spoil the water supply. So based on all of my knowledge, all of my information, I've studied dozens of frontier burial sites in my career. I am very certain that those children would have been buried in the area that I'm tracing right now. Alrighty, somewhere in this plot, below the spring house, in the plot of ground you're seeing right anywhere near the road, and probably up into including the road, they may be there. Now, Milton Allison did say McMichael Road was there, and he didn't say the graves were beneath the road, so I'm leaning away from that. But I'm probably 99% sure those children's remains, their final resting place, is in that spot right there. I want to tell you I'm very excited about this, and I am, in the sense that we've accomplished our mission, I think. But it's a very sad thing, because before I'm a historian, I am a person. I don't believe any gravesite, any memorial should ever be lost or forgotten. I believe those children were buried because they were meant to be remembered. And as far as we know, they were never disinterred. Now, the remainder of the Walker family will be buried a distance away at one of two churches, and we'll do later episodes on that. But the 8-year-old boy and the 12-year-old boy, the Walker children, were found their final resting places here. Like I always said, I'm not doing this project to make money. I'm not doing this project for attention. What I want is historical markers put in place so people don't forget the events that happened here, so we can study them and remember them and memorialize them. And from a personal level, to me, a burial site, a graveyard, is something that, before anything else, should be memorialized. So if you are the landowner, if you know the landowner, if they are interested in getting a roadside marker of some kind, or even a further study, I would be thrilled to help. You can find me and reach out to me at bradykreitzer.com. You can find me on Facebook. You can find me on Twitter or Instagram or wherever you want. I am 100% here to make sure these children get the proper memorial they deserve, because they are gone and they are not forgotten, and they are a critical part of this region's history. Now, before you ask, this is a question I always get at these very old burial sites: are their bodies still there? And I would say with 100% certainty, they are not there. And the reason I would say they are not there is twofold. Number one, there's a lot of free-flowing spring water in the area. It's a very wet, soggy area, if I had to guess, just because it's around a spring. That is not conducive to the preservation of bodies. But number two, and this is what I think is more telling, the soil we have here in the Allegheny Plateau, western Pennsylvania, is often highly acidic. So I've seen previous cemeteries exhumed before. I've seen bodies relocated for proper memorialization centuries after their burial. Very little remains due to the acidic nature of the soil. You may find teeth. You may find scraps of clothing. You may find buckles of shoes or belts, but there are not skeletons underneath that soil. It's probably not going to happen. But it's an important site nevertheless, and a final resting place. And I think it's an important addendum to the raid on Robinson Run as we're studying it. So as always, thanks again for watching. I look forward to hearing from you. I love your comments and your research. Please give me a like, subscribe, give us some sort of nod of approval if you want to pursue historic markers with me. I think having community support is really important for this. Otherwise, everybody, we'll see you next time on Robinson Run.